Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Debra, and this is Human Potential at Work. Today, my guest is Steve McEvoy, and he is an expert in networking, and he also does disability employment, and he does coaching for people with and without disabilities. So welcome to the program, Steve.
Hi, Debra. So nice to be here, and thanks for having me. I've long admired your work, so I'm truly appreciative to be on the program today.
Yeah, so Steve, tell the audience who you are and a little bit about, your work and how you're helping people.
Sure. So I'm a disability employment specialist, so I work in three main areas. I help people with and without disabilities to reach their employment goals. I write about issues surrounding disability and employment, and I also present at companies and teach them how and why employing and marketing to people with disabilities is good for their bottom line. And I'm really proud to have co-presented on the topic at Google's Accessibility Week in 2016 in New York City, where I live. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Well, and tell me why you're interested in this topic.
Well, initially I wanted to be a gen ed special ed social studies teacher. I'm a nerd. I come from the little green republic of Vermont. We tend to like to be outside and be smart. So I went to school and got my master's in secondary social studies from Teachers College, and quickly found, due to my cerebral palsy, that teaching, at least in New York, presented a lot of challenges. And my passion really became, I want to make sure that every person with a disability, one, doesn't go through the bumps in the road that I have in terms of bias and discrimination. And I want to stress this, at some stops in my career, not all. And I want to make sure that that companies and organizations know that, as we know, and so many others in the field do, that hiring people with disabilities is bottom line. It expands your brand presence and increases profits. So that's how I became a proselytizer. That and reading the book No Pity by Mr. Shapiro in about 2003 or so.
Yeah, I love that book, and I love the movie that came out because of it. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on some of the problems that you mentioned just then that were getting in your way?
I think the biggest thing that gets in people's way, it's to really quote Randy Lewis, whom I've respected for a long time and had the pleasure of interviewing. It really is pity wrapped in love and misunderstanding. I don't think anyone does so maliciously, but I think, and no, I'm preaching to the choir here, but it really is people saying, well, we're heroic or we're to be pitied, but nobody asks the fundamental question of, okay, well, even if we're heroic, we still want to be taxpayers, as your guest last week, Deb, so eloquently put. And more to the point, people with disabilities aren't seen as whole humans by a lot of folks to this day. So it isn't that folks didn't want to hire me. It's, fear. And I would also say a misunderstanding or not a full knowledge of the ADA. And that, when you have the ADA, it doesn't mean that a person with a disability can't be fired. It simply means that they must be able to perform the core requirements of the position with appropriate accommodations. And there's a lot of misunderstandings with that. But regardless, I'm a teacher at heart and love working with young people in all aspects. So, for me, it's really just things coming together. Necessity is the mother of invention, you might say.
I agree. And we talk a lot on the show about what it means to be human, and really focusing on the multidimensional human being and what we bring to the table. And there's still a lot of misunderstandings about this topic and about employing people with disabilities, especially people with very severe disabilities or physical disabilities that can be seen. I see a lot of corporations focusing on the easy hires, which we appreciate. We appreciate any hire, any retention, any promotion of individuals with disabilities, but we still see a lot of people with severe disabilities being left out of these conversations. And so that's one thing that we're trying to make sure that we highlight all the different resources that are out there. There's a lot of people doing things. And some are more effective than others. And I get complaints from corporations all the time that the experts, the consultants out in the field do not understand the complexity of the large not only multinational corporations, but the nationals as well. And that is true. But slowly but surely we are making some progress. But let's talk a little bit about you say that you're a big networker and you help people with networking. So there's a lot of ways that I can take that. It's a very broad term, but tell me a little bit more about what you mean about networking as far as supporting, people with and without disabilities to become employed.
So first and foremost, I'm not a computer person, so this is not computer networking. So for those of you who are listening who are afraid that, oh, it's very technical and I'm not into tech, this is not tech. Networking at its core is individuals coming to individuals in fields that are experts or more advanced in that field and coming to them for informations and suggestions to learn about that field and grow a relationship that's based on trust, respect, and above all, professionalism, so that when you're coming to the people and asking them questions and learning from them, they learn by you showing up to informational interviews, calling when you say you're going to call, emailing when you say you're going to email, that you're genuinely interested. When you then connect with those folks and keep them updated to what you've been doing, over time, you develop relationships. And so what happens is those conversations that initially were about learning about the field or fields that you're into become, oh, did you know about this opening or that opening? And for people with disabilities, having a strong network filled with decision makers, and that's something that when I work with my clients, that's something I pound on. You have to have people that have the ability to hire you, that can look beyond the bias and the pity and the hero stereotype, bottom line.
Right, the inspirational porn. Yes.
Yep.
One thing that I find is that people often say that it's very different to get a job these days, but we always, it was always about networking and who you knew, because things have certainly changed a lot. The way you submit your resumes, keyword searches, it's very, very different how, you get a job these days, but still, it still is who can really make a big difference for you. And there's a lot of ways that you can engage and connect with leaders on social media, but there definitely should be done very thoughtfully, because I have people reach out to me that just say, I'm disabled, give me a job. And that is not the way you get a job. And so there's still a lot of the understanding of how you need to do this, and how you properly engage in the conversations, and how you're engaging on social media and networking and stuff. So I think networking is very essential when finding a job, or finding a new job or promotion, even within the current corporation or wherever you're working. So networking is something that's still very valuable. But why don't you talk a little bit more about how you help your clients when in regards to networking and making sure they're connecting with, like you said, connecting with the right people, the leaders, the decision makers, but sometimes easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, and today's topic is really, advice, as far as we've spoken earlier, advice for folks with disabilities on how to network. And networking at its core is coming out of your comfort zone and learning to project confidence, learning how to speak with people, learning how to have a firm handshake, how to have a solid 30-second pitch so you can show someone this is what I've done, etc. But it's never something where, to quote my mentor, Dan King, and I hope to send him a link to this when it's done, because he'll have a good laugh and say, I taught you all this, and I should get a thank you, so I'm thanking him. And there are some others, sadly, some that are not with us. But in any case, when you're networking, you have to view it as seeds in a garden, and it takes time. And anything that a person can do, whether it's joining a band, joining a choir, having a podcast, even saying hello to 3 people on the street when you're nervous talking to folks, got to get out of your box and be uncomfortable, because networking is a tough job, especially with a disability. The other thing I would say too is you've got to be mentally healthy and mentally physically. And if either of those things are out of balance for you, it's very hard to be a good networker. So that's the no joke advice that I would give. And it's so important, because people hire who they like and who they're in accord with. And at its core, you're getting in accord with folks and showing them that you have value in terms of your interest, in terms of your background, so that people get in accord with you and know, if I hire this person or recommend them, they will reflect well on me and not poorly.
And I agree with everything you said. I do know that a lot of people I work with, they can't shake your hands because they part of their disability is that maybe they have severe limitations. So knowing how to adopt to different situations. I have a team member, Lamondre Pugh, and he does it really graciously, because due to his MD, muscular dystrophy. he cannot shake your hand. And so what he does when he meets somebody, he very quickly says to so that people don't feel uncomfortable, just give me a little fist bump. And he handles it so eloquently. And I remember meeting a gentleman that is a leader in Tennessee, and he was born with no arms. And I wasn't exactly sure in the social situation what to do. And I asked him, Kevin, what I said, Kevin, what what is the appropriate way? I normally would shake your hand. What would you suggest I do? And he suggested that I shake his shoulder. And so it's important to know that sometimes asking the person is the best thing to do, because they can guide you down the path. Because once again, I want to talk always in these shows about people with more severe disabilities as well, because they're often left out because they cannot get to the interview, or they cannot, if the interview place is not accessible, or they cannot shake your hand or speak in the traditional manner. So it's really important to look at all these moving parts and to seek to educate and help people learn. So I know that you feel that it's very important, and of course I do as well, that people with disabilities and people without disabilities have a really strong network. Certainly when we're looking for employment, but it also is good in other ways as well. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that and how you help your clients?
The folks that I've helped, So my first client, and I do serve people with and without disabilities. So my first client was in full disclosure, he was an Eagle Scout and incredibly motivated. And when I first met him, he didn't know anything about networking, following up, differentiating his contacts in terms of, I always like to say to folks, you want folks that are high level in terms of their ability to both potentially be a mentor for you and also be that person that either knows the person that's doing the hiring or has the power to hire you directly. So in about 10 sessions of 60 minutes each over about 3 months, I taught him everything I knew. And keep in mind, I learned everything living with spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy, walking with a limp, and living with learning disabilities. Although I am a Red Sox fan and living in New York City, that can be a disability sometimes too. But at the end of the day, my first client went from no job to 3 months later, he had 4 jobs, not 4 job offers, 4 jobs. And in terms of folks, go ahead.
Well, 4 jobs, I mean, how do people do 4 jobs? And so I assume that he didn't get a full-time job, so he had to make it work and cobble together 4 jobs.
I believe he got himself a job at Home Depot. He got a job working with a friend of the family. And then that turned into another part-time job that I believe was also in construction. And then he ended up working for a New York City events promoter where he's been for a while, and he's been to the Super Bowl twice and helped put together a bunch of major events. So I'm really proud of him, and we're friends now. So yeah, I couldn't be happier.
Good example. Well, I know that you sent me different questions, and one of the questions you had asked, that you had said was that there were leaders that have really inspired you as an individual with disabilities as you followed your career. You've already mentioned a couple people that have been impactful to you, but I thought that was a good question. So who has inspired you? Who disability rights and the civil rights movement and stuff?
And I would say not so much inspire me, but help me to feel not alone and help me to know that I was part of something greater than myself that'll continue long after I'm gone, God willing. I would say definitely Ed Roberts, Judy Heumann, as I've studied abroad in Ireland and do traditional Irish fiddle. So her experience studying and being a teacher in New York City, the whole education connection. I would also have to say a gentleman that gets overlooked by history, a Jewish city council member by the name of Isidore Munchnick in Boston, who was instrumental in getting Jackie Robinson a tryout in 1945. And he is the missing link in a lot of civil rights to do with Robinson. So Izzy Munchnick is a guy that doesn't get a lot of press, but in terms of Robinson's experience, I can really relate in some ways. While I'm not African-American, certainly, and I would never, claim to be, I can certainly empathize with Robinson and just civil rights in general. So I would say Izzy Munchnick and the other folks that I just mentioned.
Yeah, Judy Human's great, and Ed Roberts. There are so many leaders that are making a difference,
And,
and
and I,
and a lot of young leaders as well. So it's
and
not just the people that are older. I actually see a lot of people with disabilities that are younger that are really stepping up and trying to break down the barriers and change the rules. And and I've had some of them on the show. It's very exciting seeing the young leaders step up and really say, well, I don't think this makes sense. I think I'm going to create another path down
yeah,
this way. And I'm excited about that too.
yeah, and just briefly, I would say for the young leaders, I had the chance to meet Haben Gurma almost 2 years ago at the Ruderman Conference in Boston. That was great. And I also really respect Rich Donovan, Neil Romano, and Mark Wafer, and of course Randy Lewis. And Zubion Woods out in Houston is doing great work in terms of assistive tech. Check him out; he's a great guy. So yeah, there's a lot of us. We're everywhere. 1 in 4 in the U.S., I believe, or 1 in 4 in the world. Is it?
No, it's according to the CDC, 1 in 4 Americans identify as having a disability, American adults. And then according to the World Health Organization, they estimate 1 in 7, but many countries don't do census, so we don't really know. We know that Canada and the UK, they're saying 1 in 5. So we don't have as strong a numbers, and because often, people don't want to identify as
Yeah.
being part of the disability community, which is part of, what we're trying to overcome. I'm really trying to encourage everybody to really be who they are. But at the same time, when you're being discriminated against, sometimes you do what you have to do to make sure that you join the workforce. So,
Do whatever you have to do.
yeah. Yeah, and I know that and don't want to pick on you, but a lot of the people that you named were all men except for Judy Human. But I'm really excited about some of the young women that are coming up. K.R. Liu at Amazon and Margot Jaffe at Verizon Media are 2 women that I've met recently that are wowing me. So there's a lot of female things
Yeah.
happening too,
And
and a lot of.
go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to say I feel remiss that I didn't name women, and I should.
No, you named Judy.
Being a mother, I named Judy, but I would also like to, and I just couldn't think as fast as I wanted to think. But in terms of women, I'm trying to think of her name, and it just went. Becky Curran out in L.A., who does a lot around Hollywood. Allie from New Jersey, whose name I forgot, who just won a Tony.
Allie's wonderful. I've been watching her for years. And Caroline Casey is an amazing
I was just
woman.
trying to say Caroline Casey, and you beat me to the punch. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of people trying to do a lot of good work, and Sarah Jam out in Ontario. So there's plenty of us. But
well, there are a lot of people, and we need more and more people. And one thing that I see sometimes happening in our community is that somebody comes in, they start having some success, and they want to shut the door behind them. But it's very important that we leave that door wide open, which is why I interview the people that I interview on my show, because we need all of the voices talking in the same way, and we need the allies of our the different communities as well. You mentioned the African American community. There's a lot of diverse communities that together we're stronger. And of course, our community, the community of people with disabilities, is the largest of all the communities and go across to everything. So it is very exciting. I know you had talked to me offline about efforts that you were making to get people with disabilities more involved in sports, in sports as a career. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind explore that topic a little bit. Sports
is a career, and also fans for teams and markets that are struggling. So once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, I wasn't on Star Wars, but I went to the baseball winter meetings in 2002 to learn about the business of baseball. And over the years, been able to go back to the winter meetings and get to know some great people in the game, including the recently retired from Cooperstown, Jeff Idelson, who was a mentor, friend, and one of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. Scott Poley at minor league baseball, and until very recently, Vince Pearson at minor league baseball. But at the end of the day, because about 68%, I think, of disabilities are invisible, baseball's fans in particular are becoming older. So any of the sports where fans are becoming older, there's a massive influx of individuals with disabilities who could be those fans. And not only that, could come to franchises and work because sports are always going to be here. In the era of automation, Americans, people worldwide, they love sports. Uh, and I did submit a proposal to a professional league, and I've, submitted some other things, and I wish that there was more movement on it. But at the end of the day, sports will be here. People with disabilities are here. And I think it's a match made in heaven. I mean, if you look at Rich's work, if you look at the stats that Neil put together for Rich, and I know that because I got the chance to meet Neil and speak with him 2 years ago at the Ruderman conference. At the end of the day, it's a massive untapped market of consumers and employees that across sports, not just baseball, but across sports can, have success. So that's the thing that I've been talking about.
Right. And I know Neil Romano has been really engaged in
Yeah.
these conversations, and he did a documentary. I was blessed to be part of that documentary. And he's been a presidential appointee multiple times. He's an appointee right now under the current administration. And Neil Romano is really an amazing man himself, a person with a disability, including a successful fight that he took on with cancer. And he's just really an amazing man that has brought a lot to our community. Once again, it's going to take all of us and the younger leaders as well, because you just can't do it with just one or two leaders at the top. It really has to be everybody pulling together and making sure that you're not worried about who's going to get credit, but making sure that people with disabilities are truly included across the board in the employment, as well as, every other aspect of society, which is, what we focus on. I know that you have helped a lot of people with and without disabilities, which I think is just an important to note, because one thing I loved about you was that you are a person with disability that is actually providing a lot of support for people without disabilities. And we traditionally in society do not think about that. We think about, oh, let's go help those poor people with disabilities, when people with disabilities bring a lot to the table. We actually can help you do better in your own life. And so I liked that aspect of it. So tell us a little bit about how you talk to not only the individual, but how do you talk to the employers about why they should be employing people with disabilities?
Would you like me to talk about employers or one-on-one clients, just to clarify?
Up to you. It's up to you. I think you should talk about both if you're comfortable, but it's your call.
So briefly, and you can always find me at McAvoyac.com, and I will have my contact info at the end of the broadcast, of course. But with clients, it's really about building confidence and showing them how to network successfully, how to be in charge of their employment search, and how to be proactive, okay, and how to just get in there, give it a try, and have small, manageable goals. I don't care if it's you get 3 people to hang up on you when you practice, calling to ask about informational interviews, and that's your goal. Good, you met that goal, you move up to the next goal. Nice, manageable goals until you're at the point where you're organized, you're confident, you go in, you get the job, and you excel. And not only do you excel, you move forward and have a vocation and a career, so that whether you're a person with a disability or not, you have salaried, benefits eligible employment to the greatest degree possible. And I say to the greatest degree possible because, of course, not all people with disabilities, because of different funding that they rely on, can do that. So in terms of companies, it's really just, hey, ladies, gentlemen, there's a lot of money to be made. Do you want to make money? Because if you hire us, we work harder, we're safer, we don't show up late, we are impeccable, and what we bring you is a massive market totaling trillions of dollars when you include friends and family of people with disabilities. I mean, the math is out there. And when you say to people, would you like to be part of this market? That's very different to the old, tired, boring, terrible, awful, well, would you like to help some really helpful people out with a job? No. And, I do that way to really say, hey, that doesn't work. We know that. But there are all these folks out there that want to work. And if you would like to get ahead of your competition, by all means, get up and hire them. Because if you don't, somebody else will.
Yeah, I
in so many words.
well, and I'll just say I hear what you're saying, and I've used some of that language too, but I will just tell you that there is a problem with what you said. I want it to be correct, but part of the problem is, even though we are a billion people strong, we still do not speak as one community. Our community does not change our buying behavior because one company includes us and another doesn't. And if we are doing it, we're not talking about it on social media or writing letters or making sure the CEOs of these companies know it. There's still a huge issue because we say, you're leaving trillions of dollars if you don't do it. We have all this buying power, but we do not use our community to truly do that. And so a lot of the corporations don't believe that. They don't believe a lot of what you just said because we can't ground it with real examples. So that, I'm not saying that everything you said is true, but the problem is we cannot prove it. And until our community really starts voting with their wallet, their pocketbook, until we really say, I am only going to buy clothes from Tommy Hilfiger because they made adaptive clothing which supports children with disabilities, or until you change to a Walgreens or a CVS or one of the organizations that's really working hard to include us. Until we see a game shift, I think we're going to continue to struggle. I see people say all the time to corporations, well, you're leaving just tons of money by not including us on the table. And unfortunately, until our community comes together more to get, and says, really, we are not going to support your corporation. We're not going to work for you. We're not going to, and our allies join us. I think we're going to continue to keep saying these things. And a lot of the corporations don't believe it because we can't prove it yet. We're going to get there, though. I've got some stuff in queue right now that I think is going to help, but it is still, unfortunately, a problem that they don't believe us.
Yeah. You are preaching to the choir, as it were.
I know, but it is still something that we need to talk about because I hear a lot of experts saying, you better include us or, it's, your competitors will. And I'm looking for a time when that is going to be more the case. I represent the Valuable 500 with Dr. Caroline Casey here in the United States, trying to get U.S. corporations to join the Valuable 500. There's no cost. You have to be a corporation. You have to have at least 1,000 employees, and the CEO has to sign it. And I'm getting so much pushback. And I know that corporations are paranoid in the United States because they get sued, but I worry about the corporations not really showing true leadership and truly including us. And so I think there's still a lot of opportunity to make the things that you said, which I agree with, really true, so that we can point to it and say, well, look what this corporation did and how everybody's choosing them as a bank because they're including us. So we still have work to do in our community to come together and be proud to be part of our community. And, I know you totally agree with me on that. But Steve, I want to make sure that you have time to tell the audience how to get hold of you, because Steve is the real deal. He is a person himself with a disability. He is adding a lot of value to these conversations. He can help people with disabilities, without disabilities. He can help corporations that are wanting to include people with disabilities. But let's make sure that people know how to get in touch with you.
Sure. As you well know, I'm a bit addicted to LinkedIn, so you can find me at linkedin.com/in/Steve, STEVE, -McAvoy, McEvoy, ACCESS. And that's McAvoy Access. That's the name of the organization that I'm putting together. And you can find my website at mcevoyac.com. I have done some stuff on Twitter. I've really moved away from Twitter. Also done a few things on Medium, but you can find my organization Gmail at McAvoy Access, which is mcevoyaccess@gmail.com. Or if you just do a quick Google search of Steve McAvoy, spelled McEvoy, yes, it's an Irish tongue twister, and I'm repeating it because it gets misspelled a lot. The one great thing about it is I can always tell when a telemarketer's calling me. So that's
right.
it. That's
I know my daughter hates when she gets mailed to Sarah Rubb or Sarah, ROUX. She gets very offended. It's like, well, people do their best. But we also will provide all of these links on the podcast page so that, in case you didn't write it down, we'll make sure that you know how to get in touch with Steve. But Steve, let me give you let me allow you to, the final words and make any closing comments that you would like.
I think more than anything, what I've learned having a disability is unity is everything, and it starts with networking. If you can network and someone sees you as a human and sees value, then the problem will stop. but that means collaborating, working together. And I have to say too, as much as I've enjoyed consulting, in a perfect world, I would love to eventually transition to a company and help build and or foster and grow a disability employment initiative, similar to what happened at Walgreens, etc. Because in my heart, I'm a teacher, and I like being a consultant. I like having my office. I like having my air conditioner and going to work in, comfortable casual clothing that is always mostly formal. But at the end of the day, I'm a people person, and I miss that. So to me, it really is about also being empowered and having simple, small steps. So whether it's sending me an email, as I said, getting out, we've got to advocate and we've got to work together. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, can we work together? Don't look at them and say, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to take away from me? For heaven's sakes, look who's in the White House. We need to work together. If we don't, bad things are going to happen. End of story. If you want good things to keep happening, get off your butt, do something, work together. I'm from Vermont, we're blunt.
Well, and you're a business coach, so you're supposed to keep motivating people. So
I have been told that I'm too motivating sometimes, and my partner of the last 6 years, she'll tell you that sometimes I am too vociferous sometimes. But sadly, I've been talking since I was 7 months old, and I haven't stopped. So some of that passion comes out as well.
right. Well, and that's what it takes to change the world, I think. We need to be passionate about the work that we do. So, Steve, thank you for being on the show. And I think everybody that watches, and we are now accepting sponsors. So if anybody's interested in sponsoring Human Potential at Work, we are in 86 countries and growing. And we are really blessed to have a really great audience, partially because of guests like Steve. So, let me know. It's www.ru hglobal.com. We're trying to let you know the experts that are out there talking about it, and the corporations that are making a difference, the UN agencies, everybody that's trying to make sure that people with disabilities are fully included. Lots of work to do, but it's certainly worth it. So, Steve, thanks for being on the show today. Special thanks to Deb Forrest, my producer, and I look forward to talking to everybody again on the next Human Potential at Work. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, Debra.